We have Jeff Mateer. He is the general counsel for the Liberty Institute. Jay Sekulow is the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice. And then Bill Donahue is the president of the Catholic League. He's in our New York newsroom. Let me just start with this, and I guess I'm going to start with you, Jeff. The fundamental transformation of America is absolutely here. Is there anything in the monologue that I just laid out that is wrong?
No, I mean, Glenn, you were spot on. I mean, today's decisions, what they really deal with, the real issue that these decisions lead to are religious liberty issues.
Right.
And what the decisions really, it's what's going to happen in the future. And you're absolutely right. The issues that are what are churches and pastors going to do about it? So many times, I mean, I've been out speaking to pastors groups. They have no idea these issues are going on.
None.
They're in a cocoon. And they're so ill-informed. And we need pastors and churches and people of faith to really wake up. And I hope today's decisions. Now, today's decision didn't do what the left wanted.
Right.
The left wanted the court to say there's a fundamental right.
But it put the nose of the camel in the tent.
It did. It's headed that way. I think you used the word nudge or push or shove. Well, we're headed that way. And if we don't wake up, we're going to be there, and you're absolutely right. They're going to come into our churches.
Okay, so let me go to Bill, because you're with the Catholic League. I mean, I said to you a year ago, Bill, we're all Catholics now. We all have to stand together. Some Catholics get it. Other Catholics, I'd love to see the Catholic Church come out and denounce Nancy Pelosi. I've had enough of these Catholics who say they're Catholic but disagree with everything the Catholic Church preaches. The Catholics have got to come out along with every other church and start to link arms, because I really truly believe that in the short distance here, not too far down the line, you're going to start to hear, you watch on television, people will say, well, do you believe the Bible? Is it a sin to be a homosexual? Well, the Bible says that. So if you want to disagree with God, that's fine. I don't really care if you believe it or not. I do. And they're going to start to separate us and make Christianity and Bible-believing people a pariah. Agree or disagree, Bill?
Well, there's no question. No, I agree. I agree with you. I mean, you laid it out very well. I mean, the biggest concern I have is this. As a sociologist, I can tell you it makes no sense. It's sociologically illiterate to talk about marriage without talking about the family. That is, in fact, the functional purpose, is procreation. And once you strip marriage of its procreational element, you're down to what I want and what he wants and maybe threesomes want. If you look at the Supreme Court decisions today, they mentioned the word children in passing 8 times in DOMA, not once in Proposition 8. I mean, if we're prepared to say that Tom and Dick can get married, who's to say on what rational basis do you have, once you take procreation out of it, that Tom, Dick, and Harry cannot get married? I mean, we've already seen cases where people have been pushing for polygamous marriages. We've seen cases where incestuous marriages. I've written about a case of Alan and Patricia Muth, who have petitioned the courts that they want to get married as brother and sister. I'd like to hear from those people who are enthusiastic about these two decisions today to give me a rational reason why they shouldn't be allowed to marry.
Well, I will tell you, Jay, let me take that here with you. I've been saying this for a long time. And what the response is, oh, well, that's ridiculous. No, it's not. Sharia law. You cannot change one variable without changing the other, without being a bigot. So if somebody deeply believes, because they're Muslim, that I should be able to marry as many women as I want, you're going to go down that road. And anybody who thinks that we're not going to go down that road, it doesn't notice how we play footsie with CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood.
That's right.
We're giving the Muslim Brotherhood right now a free right, a check for $1.8 billion, and while they waived human rights violations, and we're not requiring them to certify human rights. So that you bring up a whole issue there, what the government's even doing. There's also reports that a sheikh who was calling for the killing of American soldiers in Iraq was invited into the White House because he's now a representative of the Muslim Brotherhood government. But putting that aside and getting to what you're talking about today with the cases, Bill, but Bill Donahue was just talking about, and Glenn, what you're saying, I think we have to look at what the cases actually held, though. And that is this. In California, there is no decision on the merits. That means that in California, Proposition 8, while it's basically overturned, and there's questions on whether it's really overturned or not, but assuming it is, that's just for California. There was an attempt to get a national standard on marriage as a fundamental constitutional right for same-sex couples. The court did not go there, and that included conservative members of the courts and liberal members of the court. You flip it to the DOMA case. In DOMA, I'm not shocked that DOMA came out this way, because there has been this undercurrent of the federal government. There are those that, and you said this in your monologue, that believe that the state should be defining the institution of marriage, not the federal government, and by having this portion of DOMA, the federal government was in the definition of marriage business, which probably shouldn't have been in the first place. But what they did not challenge was Section 2, which is the requirement that, let's say if there's a same-sex marriage in New York and the couple moves to Texas, does Texas have to recognize that? Under the law right now, they do not. And that's because the couples that challenged the portions of DOMA didn't challenge that section, only the federal benefits section, and that's a fundamental difference. Okay. And a lot of people are glossing over that. And what we have to rest on here, Glenn, what you pointed to earlier, is that the free exercise clause of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution is in place, and the government cannot compel any pastor, rabbi, or priest to engage in or promote or acquiesce into an activity they disagree with. Now, if the church wants to perform same-sex marriages, they have the right to do it. Again, the government shouldn't be telling the church what to do. Right. Likewise, if a church says, you know what, our denomination says we're not going to recognize same-sex marriage, they have the right to do that too. Will that be the cases of the future? You bet. The first case that you will find, you watch, will be in the federal government itself. It will be with the chaplains. If the chaplains don't marry homosexuals in the military, they will immediately be kicked out. I mean, this guy has done everything to undermine the traditional Christian values since the day he was elected. He started taking the Christian values of teachings of war out of the military day one.
Yeah, Glenn, you're exactly right. That's where they're going to go after the military chaplains. I mean, there's no doubt that that's the agenda, that's the left's agenda, and we're going to see case after case where because...
They already are.
You're right.
They are. So, Bill, you guys in the Catholic Church have been, wound up because you were the first real targets of discrimination against this. Are the Catholics weary, or are they ready to go, or is there such division in all of our churches that you just wonder what's going to happen next?
No, we do have an opening. I agree with Jay. I mean, I look at the situation like in football. The gays have the ball. They're going in for the score. They didn't score today, but they're in the red zone. Look, you got 38 states which have laws against gay marriage. You need 38 states to get a constitutional amendment. I don't worry about that. I worry about getting 2/3 in the House and 2/3 in the Senate. Yeah. I labored, along with some Catholics, on President Bush and with the bishops to come out in favor of a constitutional amendment having marriage as affirmed as a union between a man and a woman. Both came forward with that. That's where we need to go.
I have to tell you, I disagree. I think where we need to go is make sure the line is clearly around our individual churches. That if you want to do whatever you want to do in your church, that's fine. I don't care what you do in your church. Stay out of my church. I have a right to have freedom of conscience. It's the only win.
And that goes, and Glenn, that goes either way. So yeah. I tend to agree. I agree with you on this, and I think a federal constitutional amendment to define marriages between a man and woman, is not going to happen, and I'm not sure that that's good constitutional policy. What makes sense constitutionally, let's be realistic here, no matter what side of the issue you are. The federal government really shouldn't be in this business. Frankly, the state shouldn't be in this business. Right. These are sacraments. Now, if you don't belong to a church, there's civil ways to have marriage. The fundamental bulwark of what has to happen here, where the issue has to stop, is the government cannot tell a liberal church or a conservative church, a liberal synagogue or a conservative synagogue, what they must do or recognize when it regards to marriage, baptism, or bar mitzvah, for that matter.
And you know what?
The government doesn't have that right.
You take down the IRS, get rid of all the crap with the IRS. They shouldn't be in any of this business anyway. The government shouldn't be in this business. But you have no right to tell me what my church can and cannot do. And that's for left and right. And that's the line we need to draw.
That's exactly right. And, you know, this administration argued at the Supreme Court a little over a year ago that it could tell churches who they could hire and fire. And so, and they're going to continue on this issue.
You're right. Thank you very much, guys.